Yes, this is the iPhone 6 Plus. It's so big, it covers my head. It's massive. I finally got one. Just for reference sake, here is the iPhone 5S. That's just bananas. That this thing is that incredibly huge. Here's the front of it. It's been synced, so those are the exact same apps, exact same pictures, and it just makes just a monstrous difference in size. I cannot use it one-handed. I'll talk more about that on the on the segment later. But I'm now a two-handed iPhone user because I cannot reach stuff, even though I've got big hands and big feet. You know what that means, ladies? Big gloves and big shoes. I can't. There's no way. I don't even get halfway up the screen. Had to buy a case for it too. So we'll talk more about that a little later on. Mosquito says, Shawn, are you planning on to Gazelle my old iPhone? I can't. Gazelle isn't available here in Canada. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that Gazelle wasn't going to be available here, because that's what I've always done in the past, is use Gazelle, which is to me, a really convenient, great way to sell your old electronic devices, in particular your iPhone. You email these guys and you say, I've got this kind of iPhone, and it's this size and this shape, and they send you a price quote. That's, I think, good for 30 days. And then they send you a box, and you put your iPhone in the box. You send it back to them, and a week, 10 days later, either via PayPal or a check, however it is that you want to do it, they send you cold hard cash. And I find that a lot more convenient. I know folks will get better prices on Craigslist. You can sell it on Amazon.com for Amazon credit. You can sell it at the Apple Store for Apple credit. So I might do that. I might go to the local Apple Store and see what they're willing to offer me for it. The problem is, my poor little iPhone's got a cracked screen on it too. One of the excuses I used to get the iPhone 6 Plus was that this was broken. Still works fine, but that cracked screen was going to cost me at least $100, maybe $150 to get it fixed. So that was a factor into getting the 6 Plus. MacMan compensating for something. No, I'm not. Well, we'll talk about that later on the show. But there are, I think, for me personally, there are good reasons for wanting and finally pulling the trigger on the 6 Plus, and obviously we'll talk about that later on in the show. I wanted to point out that our good friend Monty isn't here. Monty is in the Caribbean, so good for you, Monty. Him and Brad are on a cruise in the Caribbean, not the North Atlantic. I don't care what anyone says. The Caribbean's not the North Atlantic. The North Atlantic doesn't start till you get past Bermuda, for crying out loud. That's the North Atlantic. Because when he said that on Twitter, when Monty says, we're entering the North Atlantic, I thought, where's he going on a cruise in the North Atlantic in February and March? That's insane. Because the weather sucks in February and March in the North Atlantic. But yeah, I think he misread the map. Dave D, holy shit, is that the view out of Shawn King's window? Yeah, that's where I live now, dude. This is, oh yeah, you can see it even better now. Shame River. Sheum Mountain is right there. Beautiful mountain. That's snow on top of that mountain. And we're very close. We're literally within the shadow of that mountain. I was saying earlier in the pre-show, our sunrises, even though the sun comes up at 6:30, it doesn't actually get to us till about 8:30 because we're that close to Sheum Mountain. And but it means we get beautiful sunrises. I've taken a couple pictures. If you followed me on Twitter, you'll see I posted a couple pictures over the last few days of the sunrises, and I think yesterday of one of the beautiful sunsets. And hopefully, sun's already set. It's gotten cloudy, so you may not see much of a sunset, but the sunsets here are spectacular too. Yeah, Mosquito says looks like a great place for a photographer and a biker. Hiker BC says Chilliwack is also the name of a seminal Canadian rock band. That's one of the reasons why I moved out here, was that The motorcycle roads out here are spectacular. It's really, really pretty. If you get a chance to visit the Vancouver area and you want a nature hike, or Vancouver's, all of it's got some great nature on the North Shore and places like that. But I was surprised at how pretty the area was out here when I came out here to visit. I didn't know. I'd lived in Vancouver before I moved to the States for 10 years, but never really explored the Abbotsford, Chilliwack, and beyond area. And it's beautiful. It really is pretty. There's, like I said, there's these mountains on either side. We're in this thing called the Fraser Valley. The Fraser River runs up, and on either side of it are these two mountain ranges, the Coast Mountains. And it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. As you drive along, there's really pretty farms, and this is the late winter, so the farms haven't even started to be farms. They're just brown and green fields for the most part, but I can't wait to start seeing plants coming up out of the ground. It's going to be interesting. There's all kinds of Christmas tree farms around here, so there's all these cute little Christmas trees. I saw today, looked like a cherry tree farm, because I saw a bunch of cherry blossoms in long straight rows. But there's great life around here. There's, as I said, horses behind me, chickens and goats and cows. But for me, one of the most amazing things of living out here is riding the motorcycle around and looking up, and 100 feet above you is a bald eagle just cruising along. And it's just such a magnificent sight. It's just awe-inspiring to be riding around and just seeing these big, huge, beautiful animals flying around. And you'll see them by the half dozen this time of year, and even more come the spring and the fall, because this is a prime area for feeding. With the salmon runs that we have here, the bald eagles love salmon, as we all do. Mosquito says, now I'm curious, how many interior lights do you have on you, Shawn? I got 2, and they're just basically table lamps. I couldn't get the lights I've got in the old place in Surrey here on the motorcycle yet. So we're just using table lamps right now to light me up. We're going to be, that's the other thing too, is I want you folks to let me know if you have any audio or video glitches in the show. Send me email to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com, because I need to know whether or not this wireless internet that we're using here is going to be suitable for the show. It's okay for web surfing, and it's okay for, that kind of stuff, but if it's not good enough for the show, we've got to contact the local internet provider and bump up our speed to probably get a wireless base station here in the house, as opposed to boring it from the farm behind me. Dave, you need more bandwidth. You need to get more squirrels in the wheel to power up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're probably going to need more bandwidth, but I do want to know from you guys whether or not the audio and the video of the show is coming through at any kind of decent quality. The archive will be fine, because I'm recording directly to the hard drive, both the video and the archive of the show, so that should be okay. It's the broadcast out to you guys that might be a little wonky because of the lack of bandwidth with this wireless. Macman says, honestly, as of now, it's kind of sucking rocks, roboting a lot. Interesting. Macman, where are you at? That's the thing. Let me know where you guys are at when you tell me that you're having problems, because let's see if we can, whether it's common to everybody or whether it's a geographical thing that everyone in Toronto is having problems or everyone in New York's having problems. Sherry says roboting here too. Okay. That's fine. At least I know, because it's broadcasting to me here fine. So I do want to know that you guys are having issues, and we'll try to fix those in the next episode. So later on in the show, we're going to talk more about the iPhone 6 Plus and my plans for it and why I got it. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about the Apple Watch and what Apple is going to be announcing come this Monday. We're hoping to hear many more details from Apple with regards to the Apple Watch. So we'll talk about that and much more coming up. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. Thank you guys very much for joining us here on the show. And now in our phone, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, you there? Jim? Oh, hang on. No, I don't hear Jim. I hear a lot of... There we go. Jim, you there?
Yep.
Oh, geez, sorry about that, man. I'm new setup, and it's kind of not as good as it should be. You're going to be going to the... I am going to assume you got your Apple invite to the event on Monday, right? Jim?
Yep.
Did you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I'm going to assume you got your invite to the Apple event on Monday, right?
I sure did.
Of course you did. I think we're going to assume that we're going to hear more about pricing and details, right? We're going to hear more about the date it's going to be announced or for sale. What kind of details are you expecting to hear from Apple on Monday?
Well, there's a few things I think that we're waiting to hear. First is more functionality of the watch.
Yeah.
I mean, we have an idea of things that it'll do from videos and from the last presentation and things like that, but more details about that, more details on the syncing functionality with the phone. You know, how all of that stuff is going to work.
Yeah.
Certainly pricing. And, you know, I don't think that there's any differences between how each watch works. It's the size and you know, the model. So that should be pretty straightforward. But, yeah, there's still a lot to learn.
That's interesting that you even brought up the idea that there might be something different functionality in different watches, but that's not even a possibility, at least at this stage, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, neither do I.
No, I'd be very surprised if there was anything like that.
Any guesses as to when you think the watch will be available? You think it'll be available early April, late April, mid-April?
Yeah, April.
Yeah, I think it's going to be early April because Apple tends to do these things, these events shortly. Do the event shortly ahead of availability, and they have said April. So I got to assume it's going to be early April that they're going to make the announcements. I think so go ahead.
I don't know. I don't put any weight in the timing of the event as opposed to when it's going to be available because I think that there's some differences this time. You know, what we don't know about marketing and stuff is what Apple plans on doing for the high-end watches, and do they need their, you know, fashion boutiques to carry these if that's what they plan on doing at all. You know, are they building anything special at the Apple stores to hold a gold Apple watch? I don't know. They may need some more time, so maybe it'll be later April, you know, and for preparation.
You can also see Apple saying that the Sport Watch will be available immediately and the Edition Watch won't be available until, you know, late April. You can see them rolling this out in stages, too.
Well,
anything could happen.
Some interesting things.
Sorry, folks. You're hearing all that glitching on the audio because the cable I'm using has suddenly decided it didn't want to play nice with Jim's audio. The thing is, you and I have talked about both on this show and on Amplified in the past is the idea that I'm really interested to hear from Apple how they plan on selling the Apple Watch Edition, the gold version of the watch.
Yeah.
It's I gotta believe maybe there's going to be one genius or one specialist in each store who'll have access to that gold watch, or maybe it'll only be available in high-end watch stores, a Louis Vuitton store or a Mont Blanc store, that kind of place.
Well, I can't imagine that, you know, they're going to show it to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what are you going to do? Go in and say, "Hi, I want to see that gold watch." Everybody would want to see it.
I'm going to
see it. But, you know, that would just be a complete waste of time.
Yep.
And I don't think very productive. So I don't know. I mean, there's different ways that they could sell this. You know, they could sell it in boutiques.
Yeah.
You know, for the movie stars that go in in the kind of places that you and I can't go. That you need an appointment to walk in the door. We've talked about before, and maybe they walk around and say, here's your $50,000 dress, and here's a $20,000 watch to go with it.
Yeah.
And they sell a watch like that. I don't know. Maybe they're not going to do that at all. Maybe they're going to be sitting out on the shelf like the iPods are. Who knows?
Our friend Arksine asked an interesting question. He says, Shawn, please run this by Jim. Is the Apple TV an indicator that Apple sees that some device categories don't need upgrades, refreshes every year? Should people yammering about obsolete Apple Watches take note? I hadn't thought about that. That's an interesting idea, isn't it?
It is.
That maybe the Apple Watch won't be on a yearly update cycle. Maybe it will be on a year and a half, 16, 18 months, 24 months upgrade cycle.
Could be. It could be. We don't know that either. Lots to learn.
Apple has all kinds of products that they don't update every year. The Mac Mini, the Mac Pro are products that don't get updated every year. So maybe we can dial back some of our expectations of whether the Apple Watch will be obsolete in 6 months, 8 months, 12 months.
Well, and I think that goes back to a point we've talked about before with the iPad, where we see the iPad more, the iPhone as a commodity device and the iPad not.
Yeah.
Is that something that that people will want to upgrade every year?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. Maybe a watch is, more of a 2-year thing or even more. Who knows?
It's fair because, you are not a watch guy. I am, but I haven't, quote-unquote, upgraded my watch in 12 years. I have the same Tissot watch that I bought 12 years ago in Atlanta, and I still wear that watch every day. Obviously it doesn't need upgrading. It's just a regular everyday watch, but that's certainly a possibility.
Well, if you buy an Apple Watch, you're going to need to upgrade more than once every decade.
That's right. Exactly.
Or poor Tim and Johnny are going to go broke. They'll never make it with you around.
Well, they're never going to make it with me around regardless, because I can't afford half the stuff that they put out. Interesting, again, they're doing the same kind of demo area that you guys saw with the original Apple Watch announcement. There's a section outside the Yerba Buena Center where you guys will be able to go in and to get more hands-on time. I really hope.
Where did you see that?
Tim Bajarin posted that on Twitter today.
Today?
Today, yep.
Wow.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Ben Bajarin. Tim's in Hawaii. Ben posted it on Twitter. Showing the outside area where you guys will be able to, again, assuming, go and get hands-on demo time. I'm thinking, hopefully, these watches will be different for you guys in that you'll be able to actually use them as a watch, because a lot of folks may not remember that when Jim got his hands on with the original Apple Watch demonstration, it was it was on a demo mode. It was on a loop, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You couldn't actually do anything with the watch, could you?
No.
So I got to believe that this time around, when you guys get your hands on, you'll be able to do a whole lot more with it. You'll be able to actually poke at it and see what it can actually do.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, I'll tell you that.
You, I, and Dave this morning on Amplified, and folks, if you haven't had a chance, check out Amplified on the iTunes store. You, I, and Dave talked about the Apple Watch as a fitness device this morning. Have you given any more thought about that, about how you would use it as a fitness device?
I actually, I think that would be, I think it would be pretty interesting to see what comes out. I know that developers are working on a lot of different ideas for the watch. And, I don't know. I'm going to use it as a fitness device. I just don't know how yet, because I don't know what's going to be available. And the fact is, it's going to be connected to your watch or your phone. So, all of that information is going to go in there. Does it go in? This is just thinking about HealthKit.
Yeah.
How do they stop it from going in uh, double, or is there even one of those sensors, or does it just display
Yeah.
information from your phone? And this is along the category of so much more to learn.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those devices that I think more so than any other device, even the iPhone 6 Plus, people are going to need to be able to get it in their hands, on their wrist, actually use it, and certainly Apple's going to sell several tens of thousands of these on the first weekend to early adopters. But I think there's going to be a lot of other folks who are taking very much a wait and see attitude. Even with the relatively inexpensive sport watch, they want to know what it can do. They're going to want to have a lot of information. The advertising around this is also going to be really interesting because there's so much to show about the Apple Watch. I got to believe that when Apple starts doing advertising, it's going to be a series of ads. It won't be just one ad showing the Apple Watch and showing time and showing that it's pretty. It's going to be an ad for sports enthusiasts, an ad for fitness folks, an ad for fashion people, an ad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
It can't just be one advertisement for the entire market because the Apple Watch feels like a device that's going to be accessible to, if not bought by, a large number of very different groups of people, the techie geeks, the fitness folks, the fashionistas. To me, this is fascinating.
Well, and that's going to be one of the interesting things, and I fully expect, that they'll have some of those commercials on hand like they normally do for these new products. But, just how they're going to go about getting all this message across is going to be one of the interesting things. And I think that there has to be some education piece in this too, not education the market, but educating customers. And that's going to have to be a part of what they do. That's what they did with the iPhone. Here are some things that you can do in your everyday life with an iPhone that you couldn't do before. And, there's going to be a piece of that in there. Because I think people are going to wonder why. Why do I need this?
Yeah, it's definitely something although it is interesting, though, as I've talked to people who aren't, as plugged in as you and myself and a lot of our listeners are, those folks don't seem to need a lot of convincing. We do, I think, because we're a little bit jaded and, been there, done that, and seen it all. But I've talked to a lot of other people who are just like, no, it's cool, I want it. They may not know all the things that it can do, but there's a lot of folks out there who just think this thing is going to be cool and I want it. I'll figure out what to do with it later. And that feels very iPod and iPhone-ish, that attitude of people. It's like, no, this is the latest, coolest thing. I want to buy it now. I'll figure out how I can use it later.
Yeah, I don't think that's the majority of people.
No, I don't think it's a majority, but I think it's a significant minority. It's at least 3 of the 4 people I talk to, and that's not representative of the crowd, but 3 of the 4 people I talk to have heard about the Apple Watch, are very excited by it, and that really surprised me. It really surprised me that they were that excited over a device that they know very little about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens when it goes on sale, won't we?
It's going to be fun. I'm really, really interested. This is probably the first time in a very long time I've been excited about the way Apple is going to present something to us. That it feels completely different. You kind of knew how they were going to sell the iPhone and kind of knew how they were going to sell Mac Pros and that kind of stuff. But this one, I have no clue how they're going to sell this. We've seen teases of it. We've seen it in Vogue. There's some Chinese magazines have got the same kind of advertising, and you sort of get a sense of that. But that Vogue advertisement won't be in Time magazine. It won't be the same as they put in Good Housekeeping. It won't be the same as they put in fitness magazines. It's going to be a whole different ad campaigns for all different kinds of markets.
Those people, in fitness magazines, and they must be just waiting for that phone call.
Yeah, oh yeah, no kidding. 12 pages? Sold! That's right.
Yeah.
Now, I know you are a fan of the iPhone 6 and the 6 Plus. Are you still using your 6 Plus on a regular basis?
I am.
Are you? Is it your primary phone now, or are you still flopping back and forth between the Plus and the 6?
No, I've been using this for quite a while
Yeah.
now.
Did you? You must have seen the shot on iPhone 6 campaign. The photographs Apple is posting not only on their website but in billboards literally around the world. You've seen this, haven't you?
Yeah.
Do those photos inspire you? I know you aren't a photographer. I know you like to take pictures, and I know you don't like some of the pictures that you take. But do those photos inspire you? What do you think is the purpose of this campaign? Is it to inspire folks like you to take better
Sure.
pictures?
Yeah.
You think that
I mean, it's also to show people that you can take pictures, really good pictures, with an iPhone.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we're used to. Although I think a lot of us are getting used to it. That we can do that.
I think for me, the thing is, it really shows the power. They didn't do this with the iPhone 4, with the iPhone 5, 5S. It's the 6. The 6 is that much better of a camera, at least from Apple's point of view, that they want to show this stuff off. You could take good pictures with the iPhone 5S, but they weren't this good. I mean, literally,
Yeah.
if you showed those pictures to anybody, and I have, they go, oh, those are beautiful pictures. Do you know what camera they were shot on? No, people don't care. But when you tell them it's an iPhone 6, it blows their mind.
Yeah.
It literally makes them go, wow, I did not know that. And the pictures aren't of extreme anything. They're average, everyday shots, but they're shot so well. Obviously, the photographers themselves have good eyes for photography, which helps a lot. But the pictures themselves are just shot so well. They come out so nicely on the iPhone. And the other aspect of this, folks, pay attention to the apps the individual photographers mention in the little blurb underneath each photo. And that'll give you an idea of some great apps that you can get on the iTunes store for sweetening your photos, for making them a little bit better. Because I don't think any of those photos that we saw on the Apple page are straight out of the camera. I think all of them had some sort of editing done to them, some sort of color saturation or exposure control or something done to them, because the iPhone is a good camera, but almost every photo needs some sort of editing to it to make that just that much better. So keep that in mind when you go looking at those photos. You posted up an interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I agree. They still wouldn't do me any good though.
I know you keep saying that. You keep putting yourself down when it comes to the quality of your photographs. And I think you shouldn't do that. You should just learn to take better pictures.
Yeah, you learn to play better guitar and come back and talk.
All right, fair point. Fair point. You posted an interesting story from Om Malik called Purge. He said this is an interesting article from Om Malik on his recent apartment purge of items that were cluttering his life. He said, you say, we all have so much stuff that a purge is good once in a while. You've now moved down to beautiful Northern California. Have you taken the opportunity to purge some detritus from your life?
Yes. I really do think that we really, all of us have stuff.
Yeah.
And we hang on to it for years, and because we might need it, or even cables and just a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
And then when it comes time, when it's time to purge, it's amazing how quickly that stuff goes. Out you go.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing is what you said, that we hang on to stuff, and we may not even know why we're hanging on to it. But some stuff is important. I mean, for example, how many guitars did you get rid of?
Yeah, move on.
Yeah, exactly. Some stuff you're never going to get rid of. But one thing is I've just made a move myself. I'm in the process of moving from Surrey to Chilliwack, and that gives you a good opportunity to look at stuff. My mom had this idea of she would put stuff into boxes, and she would mark the boxes, what was in it, kitchen and clothes, winter clothes, and that kind of stuff. And then she would date them. And If she didn't open the box within a year of that date, she threw the box away. She wouldn't even open it up to see what was inside of it. Because from her point of view, it was like, if I haven't needed it in the last year, I don't need it. And she would just toss the box in the garbage.
Yeah, one of those was probably the birth certificate he had such a hard time getting back.
Fair point. Yeah, you're right. Good point. Yeah. But I think that's an interesting way of looking at things, because I'm doing the same thing right now. It's like, if I haven't used this thing in the year and a half I lived in Surrey, throw it away. I've got a box of cables that, most of us techies have got a box of cables, USB and FireWire and VGA and whatever it is. I'm just throwing that box away. There's no need to keep that box. Just throw it away. There's no need to hump that box all the way out here to Chilliwack. I'm just going to toss it.
Yeah.
Although DH points out, he says, say recycle instead of get rid of. You're right, DH. Whenever you can, I know a lot of my stuff, the clothes I don't wear anymore, I'm sending those off to the local Goodwill or Salvation Army and not throwing those in the garbage. And I think Sly had a recycling place that she took a bunch of stuff to, but I'll find out the information from her and do that. But yeah, it's good at times to just go through your stuff and throw away that stuff that isn't important to you anymore. But it is hard too. It's there's memories. There's my dad had the problem that you mentioned. I might need this someday. Dad would go shopping, and for Dad, shopping meant going to the local town dump and pick up a giant cable full of wires, like the electrical wires they use for underground cabling. Going, we might need this. And he'd put it in the back of the barn, and it would sit in the back of the barn for 5 years. Dad, can we throw this away? No, I might need that. No, you're never going to need that, Dad. You're never, ever going to need that.
It's true.
So, yeah, take the opportunity. So true. Take the opportunity to throw some stuff away whenever you get a chance. If you get a chance to read the article from Om Malik, it's interesting. He's got a bit of an advantage, a little bit of a leg up on some of us, because he has access to a lot of people who can help him purge and help him understand purging. So I think he's cheating a little bit, but there's still some good ideas, and it's a good article. It's a typically well-written article from Om Malik.
Yep.
Folks, if you have a chance, check out Amplified. We did, Jim and I and Dave Mark did that this morning. It's up on the iTunes store now. It's also available on The Loop at loopinsight.com, or subscribe to it on the iTunes store, and it will show up automatically in your iTunes podcast feed. Jim Dalrymple on The Loop. Until next week, buddy. Have a good time at the Apple event on Monday, and we shall talk to you next Wednesday.
Sounds good, man.
Thanks, Jim. See ya.
Thanks.
Sorry about the audio quality there, folks. It was the case on the phone wouldn't let me get the plug all the way in, so I was literally squeezing it in the entire time. That's why you heard the audio glitches at the beginning of the interview. My apologies for that. Noticing some folks are talking about in the IRC chat room. By the way, my IRC keeps jumping in and out, so if I haven't answered your question, if you've asked a question, please re-ask the question in the IRC channel. You'll see me drop. I think you'll see me dropping in and out of IRC. ArcSign says just donate the whole box to a local thrift store. I don't want to donate a whole box of cables to a local thrift store because they may not need or want that stuff. Sly, what was the recycling area? You took a bunch of printers and stuff to one of your local recycling areas. What was the name of that company that you used? So that's where I want to take the cables and the stuff electronics that I want to throw away. Because I think that's better than, I don't want to burden a Salvation Army with cables they might not need. Certainly I'll give them old clothes and dishware and things like that I'm no longer going to be using. But I don't want to just dump a box full of cables on them. I'll wait for Sly to let me know what service she used. I think we don't need these lights anymore because see if I move these lights, if it makes it any better. I'm looking very, very orangey all of a sudden. A little bit better. For those folks who may have come in a little bit later, you're seeing a different setup because I'm now living in a different place. I've moved from Surrey, BC, out to the beautiful environs of Chilliwack, British Columbia, about an hour and a half outside of the city of Vancouver proper, and just haven't gotten all of my gear moved over from the old place in Surrey. I can only move so much stuff on a motorcycle. The movers are coming next week or the week after to move the other stuff, so then I'll have the proper lighting equipment and hopefully better lighting. But when the sun's up, the view out back here is spectacular. It's gorgeous. You can just sort of right there see Cheam Mountain or Sheam Mountain here in Chilliwack. This is a farm behind me. There's 4 or 5 horses back there. There's chickens and goats around me, cows. It's really, really pretty. So I'm enjoying living out here. Oh, by the way, for all my British friends, some friends you guys are, I'm talking to you, Michael Curtis. How come you guys never told me about penguin candies? They're called Penguin Originals, and they're like chocolate covered wafers with penguins on them. Look at this. I have penguins on my candy. These are British chocolates. I had no idea they had them. I love them. Yeah, that lighting is much better now. It's a little bright on top of my dome, but that's okay. So I've been lusting after the iPhone 6 since it first came out. Let me take this cover off of it. If only because there was a couple of reasons why. One of the reasons was I thought, oh, go away, Siri. No, don't slide power off. For those folks who are curious, here's the iPhone 6. Don't do that. iPhone 6 versus the iPhone 5S. This is the exact same. Jesus, this thing's huge. This is the exact same screens. And you can see the difference in the size of the screens. Just freaking huge. So I wanted it from the beginning for a number of reasons. Oh, Hiker BC says, we took the old electronics and printers to return it recycling in North Van. You can find a location closer to you here, return-it.ca. Thanks very much, Hiker. So I wanted the iPhone 6S as soon as it came out. But availability was limited up here in Canada, and so I sort of put it off. But I've been thinking about it all the time. Right now on the motorcycle, I drag around my iPad with me wherever I go. I put it in one of the saddlebags of the iPad. And I'll ride around. And then I'll stop somewhere to get a coffee, usually a Starbucks or a coffee shop. And I bring out the iPad to read. I read voraciously. I read constantly. And my favorite reading app is the Pocket app. I'll get, for those folks who don't know, getpocket.com is the website. And it allows you to save articles for later reading offline and on other devices. So I'll see an article on Twitter or on Facebook, or someone will send me a link to something. And it's like, I don't want to read it right now. I'll save it for later. And what I do is I take the iPad out, sit down with my coffee, and start going through these articles. I found it hard to do it on the iPhone 5S because as we get older, our eyes get weaker. And my eyes just, I found I get a lot of eye strain trying to read long form articles on the iPhone 5S. And so I knew I wanted I thought maybe the 6S because it's so much bigger than the 5S, but not quite as big as the full-blown iPad. Maybe that can be my reading device. Maybe that's the thing I can use to read all these articles I have. So that was one reason why I wanted the 6S, 6 Plus. The other was photography. I take a lot of pictures with the iPhone 5S, and I like the pictures. The problem is, as I've always said, every photo that I take has to be, not has to be, but I edit in some way, shape, or form every photo I take. I'll change the exposure levels a little bit. I'll up the color saturation because the iPhone doesn't have great color fidelity. But what I tend to do is take the photo from the iPhone 5S, put it on the iPad, edit it on the iPad, and then post it to Flickr or to Twitter or those kinds of things. It's a bit of a clunky process. So I'm wondering if I can not only take photos with the iPhone 6 Plus, but also edit photos with the iPhone 6 Plus. One of the problems with editing them on the iPhone 5S was that I found my edits were really overblown, over the top, because of the small screen. So maybe with the iPhone 6 Plus, the bigger screen, I'll be able to get better edits or create better edits with the iPhone 6 Plus. The other thing was, too, I've got, I think this is a 32 gig iPhone. And I started to bump up against the limits of the storage space. I was finding myself every now and then going, oh, I've only got 5 gigs left, or only got 3 gigs left, and deleting some photos or apps or that kind of stuff. Well, go big or go home. I got the 128 gig iPad, the iPhone 6 Plus. I better not run out of space in this bad boy. That would really tick me off. The other thing about it that I find really interesting, and I knew this from the get-go, from the very first day I walked into the Apple Store and played around with this. As much as I loved the organic shape of the original iPhone, that curvy back they had, it took a while to get used to it, but the sharp edges of the iPhone 5 and 5S made it easy to grasp and very comfortable to hold. But I knew as soon as I picked up the iPhone 6 Plus that its curvy edges made it feel even more slippericity. Sliptivity is the word I'm being told I'm looking for. The sliptivity of the iPhone 6 Plus, to me, demands I put a case in this thing. Because I can't hold it one-handed. I can't do anything with it one-handed. I've become a two-handed iPhone user now. I'm sure I'll get used to the pull-down thing off the top, but right now, I can't do stuff one-handed on the iPhone. I mean, this is the way I would normally hold it, and you can see I can't get anywhere near the top of the screen with my thumb. So I'm going to be a two-handed iPhone user. So when I was in the original Apple Store, when I was in the Apple Store with the original launch, I played around with, I tested, used the iPhone silicone case from Apple. And so I bought this one today. Didn't like the leather case as much. It had more sliptivity, less sliptivity. It felt, what? Gription. It had less gription than the silicone case. But now I can start reviewing iPhone 6 Plus cases. To me, this thing demands. I've never used a case on a regular basis. I use them for testing when vendors sent me a case. I would use it for testing, but then I would always take it off. I've never kept it on. But of course, I got a crack in the screen. You can see there in the upper left-hand corner, right-hand corner, because I didn't have a case on it. So I've at least got a minor case on it for gription, for just be able to hold it better, and I'll get other cases as time goes by. Mosquito says, I couldn't feel comfortable taking my iPhone outside without a rubbery case on it. Mosquito got the black Apple silicone case. MacMan, I got a cheap bumper case off Amazon for my 6. Works well for fixing the grip issue. Tim Simburo says, I agree, it is really slippery, but I can't put a case on it because I want to use the Olo clip. Yeah, that's one of the issues you're going to have with third-party devices. Unless you buy the Olo clip that, I think was the latest version of the Olo clip, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, actually has a case. The Olo clip is the case. I think that's available now from the nice folks at Olo Clip. Mosquito says the smooth edges are one of the few things I don't like about the 6. Yeah, I agree. It's that curviness of it, which felt so good on the original iPhone, makes it feel much, much slipperier on the iPhone 6 and the 6 Plus. So it certainly is an issue. ArcSign, just bend the iPhone 6 Plus to the middle. Makes it a breeze to reach the top. Without the case, though, it does look remarkably like a Star Trek Next Generation pad. I wish I could believe that wasn't a coincidence. Sly says, the thing I hate the most with the iPhone 6 Plus, she assumes the 6 too, is the damn power buttons on the right side instead of the top. I hit it so many times when trying to take a photo horizontally. Oh, God, you're right, Sly. The thing for me is hitting the power button on the side changes the volume. When I hit that, because you're squeezing at the same place on both sides of it, I'm changing the volume at the same time. That is annoying. I wonder why Apple changed that. There's nothing. Is there something on the other? Yeah, on the iPhone 5S, there's nothing on that side. I can't believe it's a space-saving issue, because it doesn't look like the top saves any more space than that. I think it's just changing for the sake of changing. And Lesh says, MacMan says, I got used to it pretty quick here. That drove me nuts at first on my 6. So yeah, I'm sure I'll get used to it. I'll just hold it differently or change the volume. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, you do find yourself pushing the top and going, why is this thing turning off? What's wrong with this? So you keep pushing the top and nothing happens. So photography and reading are the two big things I'm looking forward to testing out with this new iPhone 6. And you know what? I don't think I noticed it all that much when I first saw the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. And having bought one, people are complaining seriously about this bump, about that bump on the lens. Are you shitting me? It's not like it's an Olo clip bump. It's a little tiny, itty bitty bump. People said it hooked on their pants or that kind of thing. I don't. Oh, come on. Really? That's what you were bitching about? I thought it was going to be like this huge thumb sticking out. It's just a minor little bump. People got way too much time to complain about way too much stuff. Mosquito, I don't care about the camera bump. Yeah, I don't care about the camera bump at all. Folks, as always, send me emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Always love getting emails from you guys. Send them to that address or send them to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com, whichever one you would prefer. I get some emails from you guys over the past week. Let me just get to that list and we'll read some of those off. Still getting used to only being able to use one screen. Gary Apter, so much talk about the Apple Watch and the alternatives. At this point, having heard much discussion about the upcoming Apple Watch, I have zero interest in it or any other wearable timepiece. I don't need to know the time continuously. I have a dislike of things on my skin if I can avoid them. No bracelets, nothing around my neck, etc. A watch would be irritating just being on my wrist. I can't recall the last time I wore a watch. Maybe back in the 60s? Dude, you're old. He says, if I need a time check, I can make the enormous effort to look at my iPhone 5S, look at my dashboard clock, or make an educated guess by an environmental assessment. Being retired, my case could be different from anyone else, but at this point, no interest in this device. If, after it becomes public and something makes sense to me, I'll change my attitude. If someone comes up with a first-class body metric, I think I would be very interested. For example, monitor blood pressure and activity seems a genuine, worthy goal for me. Hope your move is a simple, easy one. Gary Apter in Boise, Idaho. That's fine, Gary. That's absolutely fine. I don't think the Apple Watch is for everybody. I mean, I'm not getting one. I don't have a whole lot of it. I have a curiosity about it, but I don't have a lust for it. I can't see how it's going to be better than the iPhone. But having watched the Apple Fitness video on the website and thinking more about fitness just in general, going to the gym and walking more and eating healthier, maybe that could be a functionality of the Apple Watch that I would like to use. If you had a chance to read Federico Viticci's story at macstories.net, Federico was diagnosed 4 years ago with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the way he's using his iPhone and technology in general to manage not his cancer, hopefully I think that's pretty much in remission, but manage his health going forward is a really interesting story. And I think the Apple Watch might help some folks in that way. We talked about this on Amplified. Dave Mark is lack of a better term, a fitness buff. He likes going to the gym, and he likes working out, and he runs, and he does all that kind of stuff. But a lot of us want to get healthier, if not necessarily in shape, but maybe we don't want to go to a gym. But these kinds of apps, whether it be the Apple Watch or the Health app or Nike Fitness, can help you track the things you do. For example, I said on Amplified, it's the kind of thing where you start tracking this stuff and you just go for a walk around your neighborhood. And you just walk around the neighborhood a couple times around your block. And the Health app or the Move app or Nike Fitness says, congratulations, you walked half a mile today. Okay, great. So the next day you go out and you see this, you think, you know what? I want to walk a little further. So instead of walking 2 laps around your block, maybe you'll do 3 laps. And the next day, maybe you'll do 3.5 or 4. Tracking the data lets you see what you've done and realize, oh, you know what? That wasn't that hard. Let's do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And eventually maybe you find yourself walking for an hour each day. Or you're on a treadmill and you walk on a treadmill, run on a treadmill. Maybe these kinds of apps can encourage you to go just a little bit further the next time. I don't know. And maybe the ease of use of the Apple Watch would help those things. I like the idea of watching this video. I didn't realize that the Apple was doing this on the Apple Watch. If you've seen the video, you see there's 3 rings they often show in the video. I didn't really understand what was going on there. But watching the fitness video made it more clear. It will track, one of the rings will track how much time you've been standing over a 12-hour period in each day. And the ring will fill up if you stand for at least 1 minute in each of 12 hours in a day. Because standing, for a lot of us, we just don't do very often. Most of us nowadays are sitting at a desk, sitting in front of a computer. I know I am. I'm in front of this computer 6 to 8 hours a day. I get up to go to the bathroom. I come back and sit down for another hour and a half, drink coffee, tweet, get up, go to the bathroom. So if you have an app that reminds you, hey, you know what? Just get up and walk around for a little bit. Just stretch your legs and walk up some stairs and walk down some stairs. You know, rather than going into a gym and getting into a fitness program, and maybe this kind of stuff will help you just do incremental steps. Because that's the hardest thing to do. A lot of us get discouraged from going to a gym because you go to a gym and you're expected to do the whole workout. And it's painful. I mean, I went to the gym yesterday. I did some tricep works out. I can't raise my arms above my head now. Literally, if you wanted me to change a light bulb, I have to do it with my teeth. Because I literally couldn't reach up that far. But, maybe walking a little bit each day will help. For me, the hardest part about it isn't the fitness aspect. It's the health aspect, eating better. And the Apple Watch can't help me with that. I love pasta. I love pasta. And I have eaten pasta 7 days a week. I know I shouldn't. So I'm trying not to cut out pasta. I'm trying to cut back on the quantity of pasta. So rather than having a full plate of pasta, maybe I'll have half a plate. And the other half of the plate will be salad with no green stuff. Just the red stuff. Tomatoes and feta cheese and things like that. Not a fan of green stuff. Not a fan of green leafy stuff except for spinach. So maybe that's what I'll do, is have half a plate of pasta and half a plate of salad. Little steps. Moving on. ArcSign says, Shawn, please say a word about the passing of Leonard Nimoy in the last week. I never saw Star Trek in its original incarnation as a kid. I saw it in reruns in Halifax in the late 70s. And there was a certain aspect of the show that was just fun escapism. It was just, spacecraft and guns, pew pew, on stun, and aliens and monsters and weird things in outer space. But even as a kid, that one guy with the weird ears and the weird expression and his inability to be human. I don't think I thought about it that way as a kid, but you thought of him as the weird guy. But for a lot of us as kids, we were the weird guy. When I was 10, I was short and fat. I was the kid the other kids picked on. You know how kids always gang up on someone who's different. For me, I was basically a white kid in a black neighborhood. I'm half black, but I've got white skin color. My family on my mom's side is all black. And so I grew up in a black neighborhood, black culture, black people, but looking white. But identifying as black, because that's who I grew up with. So you go to school. I still remember the day I'm 9, 10 years old, and you get into one of those stupid arguments with other kids, and you call each other names. Yeah, you're a turkey. Yeah, you're a nerd. You're a geek. And the other kid called me a nigger. I was like, wait, what? I didn't know what that word means. I just got confused and walked away. Went home to my mom, and mental picture of my mom. Sly's met my mom, so she knows that this is true. 6'1", 230 pounds, black and cranky. All right, there's your mental picture of my mom. I remember going home, and get home from school. Mom says, "How was your day?" I said, "Oh, I got into a fight with a kid." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." "Yeah, he called me a name." "Oh, what name did he call me?" "He called me a nigger." And my mom was like, "All right, how do I deal with this?" And I said, "What does that word mean?" She said, "Well, some white folks use that word as a way to hurt black people. It's not a nice word at all. It's a bad word. And you shouldn't be using it." "Why did he call me that?" "Well, he wanted to be mean." I said, "If it's a word that white people use to describe black people, am I a nigger?" My mom said, "Well, black people use the word to describe someone who's ignorant." She said, "Are you ignorant?" I said, "No." "Then you're not a nigger." "Okay." Went off to school the next day, found the little white kid, went, "You're a nigger." Confused the hell out of the little white kid. Little white kid was like, "Wait, what?" And I walked away. So I was the weird kid. You know, I was the white kid in the black family and that kind of stuff. And I was the short kid and the fat kid, and the bigger kids beat me up, literally on a daily basis. On my walk to and from school at the age of 10, every day, somebody tripped me, pushed me down, punched me, kicked me, whatever it was. To school, back from school. Every day. For the entire school year. So, like most kids, you retreat inside yourself. I didn't go outside and play with the other kids because I didn't want to get beat up. And I was fat and I couldn't run, couldn't play sports. So I stayed in the house. And I read a lot. I read the encyclopedia. Literally, we had remember the World Book? We had the World Book when I was a kid. We couldn't afford the Britannicas. We had the World Book. And I literally started an A and read, I got all the way to K in the World Books. I think that's all we had because you had to buy them on an installment plan. You bought a book, you bought an edition or a volume a month kind of thing. But ours only went to K. But there was this guy on TV, this other weird guy on TV, who the other folks, even though he was weird, they liked him. And he had powers that as a kid you didn't understand. But you knew he was different, but it was okay to be different. That the other people accepted him because of and in spite of his differences. And as a short, fat little 10-year-old, that gave you hope that maybe at some point in the future, and I wasn't thinking there was space future, it was like 2 centuries away, but maybe at some point in the future, you being weird wouldn't be a bad thing. That other people, kids, adults, would accept you as not weird. I didn't know who Leonard Nimoy was as a kid. It wasn't until teens and in high school and college that I saw him in other things. A lot of folks don't realize he was a fairly well-known actor in the 50s and early 60s. A lot of Westerns. My grandfather was a big fan of old Westerns, so we watched Rawhide and all that kind of stuff. And you saw him show up in guest roles in a lot of these old TV shows. He was in Mission Impossible, too. People don't realize, the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible is a reboot of the original Mission Impossible, and he was in that, too. He was a very good actor. He had a wonderful, wonderful voice. He didn't work very much in his later years. He was on Fringe. I loved seeing him on Fringe. But if you get a chance to watch some of his YouTube videos talking about his photography, talking about his poetry, talking about his music, and his music, by the way, is awful. I'm sorry, Mr. Nimoy, you sucked as a singer. All right? You were a great photographer. You were a great poet. You were a great actor. Good Lord, he was awful as a singer. I watched the video of him explaining where the Live Long and Prosper hand signal came from. And it was from a Jewish ceremony that he witnessed as a kid. And he brought a lot of his Jewishness with him in his roles, both as Spock and in other aspects of it, too. So I love the fact, have you guys seen the story of how people have been Spockifying Canadian $5 bills? It's really kind of cool. It's up on the Loop if you haven't had a chance to see it. But I've seen this for years. Canadians have been doing this thing for years. But it was so cool to see the government, the Bank of Canada, actually come out and say, you know what, it's okay to do that. Because normally defacing banknotes is illegal. But the government of Canada has actually stepped up and gone, you know what, you want to draw Spock faces on the $5 bill, go right ahead. We have no problem with that. So, Mr. Nimoy, it's a cliche, but live long and prosper. You were a wonderful actor and a wonderful human being, from whatever I understand about you. I never met you, never had a opportunity to meet you, but you affected the life of this fat little 10-year-old, and I'll always be grateful to you for that. Roddy Paws, our friend Roddy Paws, says, I'm listening to the latest YML, and you're talking about the MacBook Pro issues. I own a late 2011 50-inch MacBook Pro, which is the exact same one I have, Roddy Paws. And I had graphic issues as well, he says. I had the system replaced a few years ago, so I can't remember the details of the issue I was having. I guess I'm lucky as it was repaired under my extended Apple Care policy, and I didn't pay a cent to have it fixed. I just dropped it off at the Apple Store, picked it up when it came back with a new logic board. This system does seem sluggish for being not really all that old. I upgraded to 16 gigs of RAM, and I even put an OWC 6 gig Extreme Pro SSD in the main drive. One of the reasons, Roddy Paws, that it may feel sluggish is that Apple underclocked that because the GPU on that was what was overheating because of either a bad design of the GPU or a bad heat transfer paste, or whatever. That was one of the things that the lawsuit was going to be about, was that Apple intentionally lowered the speed of the logic board so that GPU wouldn't overheat. So maybe that's why you think it's sluggish, is because of that issue. Our friend Jason Painter down there in Australia is asking a lot of questions, and it's fine, Jason. I don't mind you asking all these questions about Lightroom. One of the reasons why I chose Aperture over Lightroom in the beginning was the Apple integration. My albums, faces, events appear on iPad and Apple TV. With Lightroom, I've been importing an event from Aperture, re-editing it, and exporting it to JPEG, then replacing those photos in Aperture. This gives me the integration and gives me a direct path to eventually using Photos.app. But it's a pain if I change something in Lightroom, as it's then out of sync. An alternative means of getting the photos onto the iPad is to export from Lightroom to a folder. If a photo changes, I can republish to the folder with ease and sync that folder to the iPad, where I have all of my photos, but that's not integrated. The albums, faces, and events are not as important to me now, as the iPad's main use case is to display everything in chronological sequence, so I'm okay with that. Pity the search seems to be limited to place names and event names. I'm not asking you to solve this, but as you've been a Lightroom user for some time, I'd be interested to hear how you get photos onto the Apple TV and the iPad if you do that. I bought a 128 gigabyte iPad so that I could carry all my photos with me to show to friends and family. Jason Painter in Sydney, Australia. I don't do what you do, Jason, but one of the things that you could do is look into Lightroom. I think it's Lightroom Mobile, which allows you to export out of Lightroom to your iPad. The way I do it is all of my photos go to Flickr, and from Flickr, I can access them on the iPad and the Apple TV. So rather than trying to manage them in Lightroom, I simply export them to my Flickr folder, and they automatically get uploaded to Flickr, and then I can view them. You know, the Apple TV has the ability to look at Flickr, look at images in albums and folders in Flickr. So that's how I get them that way. And that way I don't have to carry them around on the iPad, taking up space on my iPad. So maybe that's a solution for you. But look into Lightroom Mobile, I think it's called. He says, I'm really enjoying using Lightroom. I like what you said about how you use it. You don't know what the sliders are doing. You just move them until the photo looks the way you remember the scene, or you achieve the look you want. Yeah, I know what the sliders do in Lightroom now, but certainly anybody who wants to try Lightroom, download. I think Adobe still has a free trial. Download it, import some photos, and literally you don't need to know what the sliders do. Just grab them and start playing with them. You'll learn eventually. You'll learn how the exposure slider affects the image. You'll learn how the contrast slider affects what this button does when you click on it. You'll learn it eventually. But you don't need to know it ahead of time. Don't think that you need to know Lightroom inside and out to use Lightroom. I'm very impressed with it. I'm very impressed with the ease of use. You will hit what I call the glass ceiling of information just poking around with it. You're going to have to learn more about it, whether you use lynda.com, whether you use YouTube, whether you use books, whether you use websites. You're going to have to learn to get better at it. But the initial playing around with it is real simple to use. Lightroom really appeals to me in its professional workflows. I'm just an amateur, but I appreciate the control I have over metadata. Its automation is advanced and has a great keyword editor. I'm currently importing events separately into Lightroom and reprocessing each photo. This is no chore because my early editing efforts were bad, and the bulk of the photos I took with my current camera have had no editing at all. I'm really enjoying working on these photos that I haven't looked at in some time. Cool. Good to hear, Jason. Checking the IRC to see if you guys are. Mosquito says, cheers, Shawn. Well said. Thanks very much. ArcSign says, Shawn, Nimoy was the voice of In Search of the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot. I never watched any of those shows. I didn't know he was the voice of those shows. I never paid attention to any of those kinds of TV shows. Mosquito says, I was very reluctant to trust iPhoto at first, but now it's kind of my entire catalog, except for the old prints I've yet to scan, because my mother trashed the negatives without asking me. I trusted iPhoto from the get-go and thought it was awful. I used iPhoto when it first came out and in the first couple of versions and just didn't find it to be useful. I didn't find the editing powerful enough. I didn't like the way it forced me in the typical Apple way to do things Apple's way. I understand why Apple did it. I have no problem with the way Apple did it. I just didn't want to do it that way. And then it was so slow. Once you got 500 photos, 1,000 photos, God forbid 5,000 photos, and I've got 10,000 photos in my Flickr account. Once you get up into the several hundred or a couple thousand photos, iPhoto just turned into a pig. At least the early versions did. And so I stopped using it, I think, after version 2, just because I found other means to do what I wanted to do and never went back to it. I never went back to any other versions of iPhoto. So MacMan says, I used iPhoto 1 for about 3 days until I found it stripped the EXIF data from the pictures you imported. Yeah, that's not good. Don't do that, Apple, without permission. Folks, that's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks very much to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining us. Don't forget, on Monday, Apple is going to announce many, many more details about the Apple Watch. It's going to be interesting to see what you guys think about the Apple Watch after those details are announced and released on Monday. It's also a live stream on Apple's website, so check that out if you get a chance. I think we'll open up the IRC channel on Monday, too, so we can chat alongside. We can live blog the Apple Watch event on Monday. And then on next Wednesday's show, we're obviously going to be talking about the Apple event. So stay tuned to that and much, much more. I want to say thanks to all you guys for being tuned in live or via the archive, however you choose to listen or watch the show. Always love when you guys are tuning in. Hang on, I'm vamping here, trying to get this cable ready so I can play us out for the show music. I didn't do that very well. I guess I shouldn't tell you guys that I'm vamping. Vamping? Vaping? No, vamping. Definitely vamping. Waiting for music to come up. So until next week, as always, folks, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya! Helps if I turn the volume up. All right.